I smoothed down the red dress one more time, checking my reflection in the powder room mirror. The fabric hugged my curves in a way my usual conservative work attire never did. For 2 years, I'd kept my head down, dressed in neutral tones, and maintained perfect professional distance. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was about me, not about spreadsheets and conference calls. My friend Rachel had set me up on a blind date. "You work too hard, Mia," she'd insisted over wine last weekend. When was the last time you went on an actual date? I couldn't remember. The past 2 years at Castellano Enterprises had consumed my life. Every waking hour seemed to revolve around schedules, meetings, and keeping everything running smoothly for him. Dante Castellano, my boss, the man whose piercing dark eyes could make grown men stammer and whose mere presence commanded every room he entered. I'd learned to read his moods like a bartender reads drunks, anticipating needs before he voiced them, staying 3 steps ahead of his demands. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. I touched up my lipstick, the deep red matching my dress. The woman staring back at me looked different. Confident, desirable. Not the efficient secretary who lived in pencil skirts and sensible heels. For one night, I wanted to be someone else. The office was mostly empty when I stepped out. Most employees fled at 5 o'clock sharp on Fridays, eager to start their weekends. I'd stayed late to finish Dante's correspondence before my date at 7. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I walked toward the elevator, my small clutch tucked under my arm. "Going somewhere?" The voice stopped me cold. I turned to find Dante leaning against his office doorway, arms crossed over his chest. He'd removed his suit jacket, his white shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that I absolutely should not be noticing. His tie hung loose around his neck, the top button of his shirt undone. He looked dangerous and beautiful in that way that made my stomach do things I refused to acknowledge. "Home," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "It's after 6. His gaze traveled slowly down my body, taking in every inch of the red dress. The air between us felt suddenly thick, charged with something I couldn't name. When his eyes finally met mine again, there was heat in them that made my pulse quicken. In that dress, his voice was low, almost a growl. He pushed off the doorframe and walked toward me with the predatory grace that made people instinctively step aside when he passed. "Who are you going to kiss after work in that dress?" The question hit me like a slap. Heat flooded my cheeks, part embarrassment, part indignation. Who did he think he was? My boss, yes. But my keeper, never. "That's none of your business, Mr. Castellano." I lifted my chin, meeting his stare even as my heart hammered against my ribs. 2 years of reading his moods told me I was treading on dangerous ground, but something reckless had taken hold of me. Maybe it was the dress. Maybe it was 2 years of bottled-up frustration. "None of my business?" He stopped inches from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. That expensive scent that always made me think of dark rooms and darker secrets. "You work for me, Mia. Everything about you is my business." During office hours, I shot back, surprising myself with my boldness. What I do on my own time, who I see, I paused, letting the unspoken word hang between us. "That has nothing to do with you." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. His jaw tightened, and I watched the muscle there jump. For a moment, I thought I'd gone too far. Dante Castellano was not a man accustomed to defiance. He gave orders, and they were followed. Simple as that. "You're playing a dangerous game," he murmured, his voice dropping even lower. He reached out, his fingers barely brushing the strap of my dress. The touch sent electricity shooting through me. This dress, this defiance. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" My breath caught. We'd never crossed this line before. Sure, there had been moments. Lingering looks, accidental touches that felt anything but accidental. Late nights in the office when the air felt too thick to breathe. But we'd never acknowledged it. Never spoken about the tension that crackled between us like a live wire. "I'm going on a date," I whispered, though my body was betraying me, swaying slightly toward him. "With someone who actually notices me as a woman, not just a secretary who files papers and answers phones." His hand moved from my dress strap to my chin, tilting my face up to his. "You think I don't notice you?" The words were rough, almost angry. "I notice every goddamn thing about you, Mia. The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. How you tap your pen against your notepad during conference calls. That you take your coffee with 2 sugars, but pretend you drink it black to seem more professional." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could do was stare into those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every defense I'd carefully constructed. "You notice my coffee?" It was a stupid thing to say, but my brain had short-circuited somewhere between his fingers on my chin and the raw honesty in his voice. "I notice everything about you." His thumb traced my lower lip, and I felt that touch everywhere. "And I notice when other men look at you, when they think about what you'd look like without your professional armor. And I hate it." "Dante." His name felt forbidden on my lips, too intimate for an employee addressing her boss. "Who is he?" The question was a demand. "This man you're meeting. This man who thinks he has the right to see you like this. A friend of a friend. I don't even know his name." The confession tumbled out before I could stop it. "Rachel set it up. She said I needed to get out more." "Cancel it." "No." The word hung between us, a gauntlet thrown down. His eyes narrowed, and I watched the storm building behind them. Dante Castellano was not a man who heard no often. Probably never. "You're telling me no?" His voice was silk over steel. "Yes." My heart was racing so fast I thought it might burst from my chest. "I'm telling you no. You don't get to control my personal life. You don't get to decide who I see or what I wear or—" He kissed me. One moment we were facing off, 2 stubborn forces colliding. The next, his mouth was on mine, hot and demanding and absolutely claiming. His hand slid from my chin to the back of my neck, holding me in place as he kissed me like he was drowning and I was air. I should have pushed him away, should have remembered every rule about professional boundaries and workplace harassment, should have thought about the consequences. Instead, I kissed him back with 2 years of pent-up frustration and desire that I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it didn't exist. My clutch fell to the floor with a soft thud. My hands found their way to his shirt, fisting in the fabric as I pulled him closer. He made a sound low in his throat, something between a groan and a growl, and backed me against the wall beside his office door. The marble was cool against my back, a stark contrast to the heat of his body pressed against mine. The kiss shifted, became deeper, more demanding. His tongue traced the seam of my lips and I opened for him. Let him in. Met him stroke for stroke. This was madness. Complete and utter madness. But I couldn't stop. Didn't want to stop. His hands moved down my sides, learning the curves the red dress revealed. When his fingers found the hem, started sliding up my thigh, reality crashed back in. "Wait." I broke the kiss, pressing my palms against his chest. "Dante, wait." He stilled immediately, his breathing ragged. We stared at each other, both of us trying to process what had just happened. His lips were slightly swollen from our kiss. His hair, usually perfectly styled, was disheveled where my fingers had run through it. "This is crazy," I whispered. "You're my boss. I work for you. We can't. You're right." He stepped back, putting distance between us that felt both necessary and unbearable. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd seen countless times but never directed at a situation like this. You're absolutely right. I bent to retrieve my clutch, using the moment to try to calm my racing heart. When I straightened, he was watching me with an intensity that made me shiver. I should go, I said, though moving felt impossible. My legs were trembling. My date. About that. He pulled out his phone, his movements precise and controlled. The businessman was back. The man who'd just kissed me senseless, locked away behind a mask of professional distance. What's his number? What? Why? Give me his number, Mia. It wasn't a request. Absolutely not. I clutched my purse tighter. You can't just... Dante, this is insane. You can't interfere with my date because we kissed. One kiss doesn't give you the right to... It wasn't just one kiss. His eyes met mine, and the heat in them made my knees weak. And we both know it won't be the last. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor shifted. The heat disappeared, replaced by cold calculation. I have to take this. Wait here. I'm leaving. Wait. Here. The words were steel. He answered the call and stepped into his office, closing the door behind him. I stood in the empty corridor, my lipstick smudged, my dress wrinkled, my mind reeling. What had just happened? More importantly, what was I going to do about it? My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Your date just canceled. Said something came up. Sorry, babe. Want to do girls' night instead? My blood ran cold. I stared at Dante's closed office door. He wouldn't. He couldn't have. The door opened and he emerged, his face unreadable. Your date canceled. You had him cancel. I didn't phrase it as a question. I did. The confirmation should have made me furious. Instead, a confusing mix of emotions swirled through me. Anger, yes. But also something else. Something that felt dangerously like satisfaction. You have no right. I have every right. He moved toward me again, but this time there was no heat, only cold determination. Do you know what I do, Mia? Do you really understand who you work for? The question sent ice through my veins. You run a business empire. Real estate, imports, nightclubs. I run an empire, he interrupted, one that exists in shadows and operates by rules the law doesn't recognize. Men like me don't ask permission. We take what we want, and I want you. I walked into Castellano Enterprises Monday morning with my resignation letter folded in my purse. The weekend had given me clarity, distance, time to think about what had happened Friday night and what it meant. Dante Castellano had kissed me, had interfered with my personal life, had casually admitted to being involved in activities that existed in shadows. Everything pointed to one solution: leave. Rachel had spent Saturday night trying to convince me otherwise. So he's intense and possessive. Is that really a reason to quit a job that pays twice what you'd make anywhere else? He's dangerous, I'd countered, pouring another glass of wine. He canceled my date, Rachel, made one phone call and my evening was derailed. Because he wants you. Is that so terrible? It should have been. It should have sent me running. Instead, I'd spent Sunday staring at my ceiling, remembering the feel of his mouth on mine, the way his hands had felt sliding up my thigh, the raw need in his voice when he'd said I notice everything about you. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor. My heels clicked against familiar marble as I walked toward my desk. Everything looked the same. The modern art on the walls, the leather sofas in the waiting area, the view of the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. But everything had changed. Good morning, Mia. Dante's voice came from his office. Not a question. A summons. I took a breath, straightened my spine, and walked through his door. He stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, watching the city below. The morning sun backlit him, making it impossible to see his expression. I need to speak with you, I began, reaching into my purse for the letter. I'm promoting you. He turned, and I finally saw his face. All business, as if Friday had never happened. My personal assistant position just opened up. You start today? I blinked. What? 80,000 a year, benefits package, office adjoining mine. You'll handle my private schedule, not just the corporate one. He moved to his desk, picked up a folder. This is your new contract. Sign it. I came here to quit. I know. He set the folder down and walked toward me. With each step, my heart rate increased. You're not quitting, Mia. You can't stop me. I can give you a reason to stay. He stopped inches from me, close enough that I caught that familiar scent. Work directly for me. See everything I do. All the business. All the decisions. No more wondering what happens behind closed doors. It was manipulation. I recognized it for what it was. But there was also truth in his offer. 2 years I'd been curious about what Dante really did. About the meetings that weren't on any calendar. The phone calls he took in Italian or Russian. The men in expensive suits who came and went through his private elevator. Why would you let me see that? I asked. If what you do is so dangerous, why bring me closer? His hand came up, fingers barely touching my cheek. Because I'd rather have you where I can protect you than out there where I can't. Protect me from what? From people who might use you to get to me. His jaw tightened. Friday night, when I canceled your date, I had my people look into him. The friend of a friend Rachel set you up with? He works for the Moretti family. The name meant nothing to me. So the Morettis are my competition, in business and in other matters. Your date wasn't coincidence, Mia. It was reconnaissance. They wanted someone close to me, and you were the target. Ice flooded my veins. That's not possible. It's not only possible, it's certain. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. A man I didn't recognize. This is the man you were supposed to meet. Vincent Moretti, nephew of the family boss. They've been trying to infiltrate my organization for months. I stared at the photo, trying to process. How did they even know about me? Because I'm always careful to keep my personal life private, which makes the people close to me interesting to my enemies. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Do you understand now? Why I acted the way I did? Why I need you where I can see you? This is insane. I stepped back, needing space to think. You're telling me I'm in danger because I work for you? You were in danger the moment you became indispensable to me. The confession was quiet, but held weight. And you became that about a year ago, maybe longer. A year ago, I thought back. That had been around the time he'd started keeping me late more often, when he'd begun asking my opinion on things that had nothing to do with scheduling, when the dynamics between us had shifted from boss and secretary to something I couldn't quite name. I can't accept this, I said, gesturing to the contract. Any of it. This is too much, too complicated. You're right. He moved to his desk, picked up another folder. Which is why I'm also assigning you security. Security? Marco will be your driver. He'll take you to and from work, escort you to any outside meetings. He handed me the new folder. This lists the protocols, where you can go, what you need to do if you feel unsafe. I opened the folder, scanning pages of detailed instructions. Protocols for everything from lunch meetings to weekend activities. It read like a manual for a prisoner. This is a cage. This is protection. It's the same thing. My voice rose despite my attempt at control. You're telling me I can't quit? I have to take this promotion, and now I can't even go to the grocery store without a bodyguard? Not without Marco, no. His voice remained calm, which only made my anger spike higher. Mia, I know this is a lot. I know it's not what you signed up for when you took a job as my secretary. But Friday night changed things. Not just between us, but strategically. The Morettis know I stopped their play. They know you're important to me. That makes you a target. Because you kissed me. Because I've been watching you for 2 years like a starving man watches food. The raw honesty in his voice stopped my protest. Because every man in this building knows better than to look at you twice. Because I moved heaven and earth to keep you in my orbit. And the Morettis saw that. Understood what it meant before even you did. My hand shook. I set the folder down before I dropped it. What did it mean? To you, I mean. Friday night. Was that just... I searched for the right word. Possession? Ego? You didn't want me to go out with someone else, so you stopped it? He moved around the desk, closing the distance I'd tried to maintain. It meant that I'm done pretending I don't want you. Done watching you leave every night and imagining where you're going. Who you're with. His hands found my waist, steady and sure. I want you, Mia. Not just physically. I want you by my side, in my life, in every way that matters. As your personal assistant. I tried to sound skeptical, but my voice betrayed me with its breathiness. As mine. He pulled me closer. Whatever title makes you comfortable, but make no mistake about what this is, about what I'm offering. And what are you offering exactly? I needed to hear him say it. Needed the words, not just the implications. Everything. His forehead touched mine. My protection, my resources, my world, dangerous as it is. And in return, you want me to be yours. I finished the thought. Exclusively. Completely. Yes. The single word should have terrified me. Instead, heat pooled low in my stomach. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe 2 years of proximity to Dante Castellano had warped my sense of normal. But standing there, feeling his hands on me, seeing the naked want in his eyes, I couldn't remember why I'd wanted to leave. The contract, I said. For the assistant position. Does it have a clause about personal relationships? It has a clause that says you're mine and anyone who touches you answers to me. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. That clear enough? Not standard HR language. I don't operate by standard rules, Mia. You know that by now. I did know it. Had known it for a while, probably. The late nights when everyone else went home, but I stayed. The way other employees gave him a wide berth. The meetings that weren't on any official schedule. The phone calls in languages I didn't speak. All of it pointed to a world beyond the legitimate business empire Castellano Enterprises presented. If I sign that contract, I said carefully, if I accept this promotion and the protection and everything that comes with it, I need something in return. His hands tightened on my waist. Name it. Honesty. I held his gaze. Complete honesty about what you do, about the danger, about what being yours really means. No more shadows. No more wondering. He studied my face for a long moment. I could see him weighing options, calculating risks. This was Dante Castellano, the businessman, the strategist, the man who built an empire through careful planning and ruthless execution. All right, he said finally. Complete honesty. But understand, Mia, that once you know certain things, you can't unknow them. Once you're part of my world, truly part of it, there's no going back to who you were before. I understand. Do you? He released me, putting space between us again. Because I'm not talking about learning I skim money or bribe officials. I'm talking about the kind of truth that will change how you sleep at night, that will make you question every moral you've ever held. Tell me anyway. He walked to the windows, hands behind his back. For a long moment he was silent. Then, my family has been in this country for 3 generations. We built our fortune on the backs of desperate immigrants who needed protection, needed work, needed someone to stand between them and the established powers who wanted to keep them down. I moved to stand beside him, both of us watching the city below. That doesn't sound terrible. It wasn't, not at first. My grandfather genuinely wanted to help, but help requires money, resources, and acquiring those required actions that existed outside the law. He glanced at me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Your family is involved in organized crime, in providing services that people needed but couldn't access through legitimate channels. His voice held no apology. Protection, work, justice when the system failed them. Yes, we charged for those services. Yes, we dealt with our enemies in ways that didn't involve courtrooms. But we also built hospitals, funded schools, kept neighborhoods safe that the police had abandoned. Justified crime is still crime. Yes. He turned to face me fully. And I won't pretend otherwise. Not with you. The imports I oversee, some of them are legal, many aren't. The nightclubs, fronts for laundering money, the real estate, purchased with funds that would never stand up to IRS scrutiny. He paused. I am exactly what you suspect I am, Mia. A criminal. A man who operates outside the law when it suits my purposes. A man with blood on his hands. The confession should have sent me running. Instead, I found myself asking, how much blood? Enough that I've stopped counting. No emotion, just fact. I don't kill for pleasure. I don't harm innocents. But when someone threatens my family, my organization, my people, I eliminate the threat, permanently. The Morettis. I made the connection. Are they a threat? They've been trying to move into my territory for 5 years. So far, I've managed to keep them at bay through strategic partnerships and carefully applied pressure. But they're getting bolder, more desperate. His jaw tightened. Which is why I need you protected, why I need you close. Because they'll use me against you. Because they'll hurt you to hurt me. And I won't allow that. I turned back to the window, processing everything he'd told me. My hands were surprisingly steady, my breathing calm. I should have been horrified, terrified. Instead, I felt something else. Clarity. Like pieces of a puzzle I'd been assembling for 2 years had finally clicked into place. The contract, I said. I'll sign it, on one condition. Which is? You teach me. I faced him again. Everything. How your world works. The rules, the players, the dangers. If I'm going to be part of this, I need to understand it fully. Not just know that you're dangerous, but understand how and why. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Most people want less knowledge, not more. I'm not most people. No. He closed the distance between us, his hand cupping my face. You're absolutely not. 6 months changed everything. I signed Dante's contract that Monday morning, right there in his office with his dark eyes watching every stroke of my pen. By Tuesday, I had my own office adjoining his, connected by a door that stayed open more often than it was closed. By Wednesday, Marco was driving me to work in a black sedan with bulletproof glass and windows tinted dark enough to hide me from the world outside. By the end of that first month, I'd attended my first meeting that had nothing to do with legitimate business. It happened in a back room of one of Dante's nightclubs. The music from the main floor vibrated through the walls, a steady bass beat that I felt in my chest. I stood behind Dante, watching as he negotiated with 3 men whose names I never learned. The conversation was in Italian, rapid fire and heated, but I'd started learning the language. Understood enough to know they were discussing territory, shipments, money. When one man reached for something under his jacket, 3 of Dante's guards materialized from shadows I hadn't known existed. Guns appeared. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Dante never moved, just sat there, fingers steepled, watching, waiting. The man slowly removed his hand, empty. Said something I didn't catch. Dante responded, and whatever he said made all 3 visitors go pale. They stood, nodded, left in a hurry that bordered on panic. "What did you tell them?" I asked when we were alone. That their boss had 24 hours to agree to my terms, or I'd make his widow the same offer. Dante stood, adjusting his cuffs. "Come on, we're done here." I should have been horrified. Instead, I found myself analyzing the exchange. The power dynamics. How Dante had controlled the room without raising his voice. How his men had appeared exactly when needed, vanished just as quickly. It was like watching a choreographed dance where everyone knew the steps except me. "I want to learn," I said, as Marco drove us back to my apartment. How to read situations like that. How to protect myself. Dante glanced over, surprised. Most people would want to forget they'd seen it. I'm not most people. I was borrowing his line from that Monday morning. "You said I need protection. I want to be part of my own protection, not just someone you guard." Something shifted in his expression. Tuesday and Thursday evenings. We start self-defense training. That had been 4 months ago. Now I could disarm someone holding a knife. Knew where to hit to cause maximum pain with minimum effort. Could read body language and threat levels in a way that had become second nature. I'd also become part of Dante's world in ways I hadn't anticipated. Friday nights were for the social clubs, where old men played cards and discussed business in coded language. I learned to read the codes. Learned which families were allies, which were rivals, which were pretending to be one while plotting to become the other. Sunday mornings were for church, where Dante's mother still attended Mass like the good Catholic woman she'd been raised to be. She'd welcomed me with tears in her eyes and kisses on both cheeks. "Finally," she'd whispered in Italian. "Finally, he brings a woman to meet me." Monday lunches were with the legitimate business partners, the ones who knew what Dante really did, but maintained plausible deniability. I learned to smile and nod, to deflect questions with grace, to be present but invisible in the way powerful men's women had learned to be for centuries. Wednesday nights were ours. Those were the nights Dante sent everyone away. When the penthouse he owned became just a home instead of headquarters. When he cooked dinner himself, refusing to let me help, insisting I sit at the counter with a glass of wine and tell him about my day. When we ate at the dining table he never used, talking about everything and nothing. When he'd pull me to the couch afterward, and we'd watch movies or read books, or just exist together. Those were the nights he'd kiss me slow and deep, hands learning every inch of me through my clothes, but never pushing for more. When I'd fall asleep against his chest and wake up in his bed, still fully clothed, with his arms wrapped around me and morning light streaming through the windows. "Why haven't we?" I'd asked once, tracing patterns on his chest. "It's been 3 months. Most men would have. I'm not most men." His fingers had threaded through my hair. "And when I have you, Mia, when I finally make you mine in every way, it won't be because hormones got the better of us. It'll be because you've chosen me, completely, with full knowledge of who and what I am. I already know who you are. You know the surface." He'd kissed my forehead. "You haven't seen the depths yet." I'd seen more of those depths tonight. We were at one of Dante's warehouses, the legitimate kind that stored legal imports, At least, that's what the paperwork said. In reality, half the containers held goods that would never see a customs declaration. Dante had wanted me to understand the full scope of his operation. How money moved, how products were smuggled, how an empire functioned when it existed in the spaces between legal and illegal. Marco had driven us in the bulletproof sedan. We'd entered through a side door that required 3 different security checks. Inside, the warehouse was exactly what I expected. Concrete floors, metal shelves, stacked containers, men with guns trying to look casual, the smell of machine oil and cardboard. Dante walked me through the operation, explaining each step. The trucks that arrived at odd hours, the paperwork that matched one set of manifests while hiding another, the distribution network that ensured products reached their destinations without official notice. Questions? He asked after the tour. I had hundreds. But before I could voice one, gunfire shattered the quiet. Everything happened fast. Marco appeared from nowhere, pushing me down behind a concrete pillar. Dante had a gun in his hand. When had he drawn it? Returning fire toward the warehouse entrance. Men shouted in Italian and English. More gunfire. The smell of gunpowder sharp in my nose. Stay down, Marco ordered, his own weapon drawn. Don't move. I pressed against the pillar, making myself small. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was real. This was the danger Dante had talked about. The blood on his hands. The threats he eliminated. Through gaps in the pillar, I watched him work. Watched him move with deadly grace, firing with precision that suggested extensive training. Watched men fall. Watched his security team swarm the entrance, cutting off escape routes. Watched Dante walk toward 3 men who'd dropped their weapons, hands raised in surrender. He said something I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. Then he shot one of them. Point blank. No hesitation. The other 2 started talking fast, pleading. Dante listened, expression cold. Then he gestured to his men, who dragged the survivors away. One of his team approached with a tablet, showed him something. Dante's jaw tightened. He looked toward where I was hidden. It's safe, Marco said, helping me up. My legs shook but held. Come on. Dante met me halfway, holstering his gun. His hands went to my face, checking me over. Are you hurt? No. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. I'm fine. You're shaking. You killed someone. The words came out flat. Just shot him. He was part of the team that was supposed to kill you. Dante's hands tightened on my face. They came for you specifically, Mia. The Morettis sent them. This was about you. The safe house was 30 miles outside the city, tucked into wooded hills where neighbors were measured in acres, not feet. Dante drove us there himself in an unmarked SUV, Marco following in a second vehicle with 3 other guards. No one spoke during the drive. The silence was heavy with unasked questions and unsaid words. I kept seeing it. The man falling. The blood. Dante's face, cold and emotionless as he pulled the trigger. He'd killed someone right in front of me. Killed him to protect me. The safe house was beautiful. A modern structure of wood and glass that seemed to grow organically from the forest around it. Inside, it was all open floor plans and expensive minimalism. A place designed for hiding that somehow felt like home. You'll stay here, Dante said. Setting my overnight bag. Marco had packed it from my apartment while we drove, on the marble kitchen counter. Guards at all perimeters. No one gets close without my knowledge. For how long? Until we resolve the Moretti situation. He moved to the windows, checking sightlines and exits in a way that had become automatic. A few days. Maybe a week. I sank onto the leather couch, exhaustion washing over me. It was nearly midnight. Hours had passed since the attack. Hours of Dante on the phone, giving orders in rapid Italian. Hours of driving through darkness. Hours of processing what I'd witnessed. Talk to me. Dante sat beside me, careful to keep distance between us. You've been quiet since the warehouse. You killed a man. I said it again, like repeating the words would make them real. Just shot him. Yes, because he was there to kill me. That was part of it. He turned to face me. The other part was sending a message. The Morettis need to understand that touching you means death. Not negotiation. Not discussion. Death. So you executed him. In front of me. I eliminated a threat. His voice remained calm, factual. And yes, I did it in front of you because you needed to see the reality of my world. Not the edges of it. Not the sanitized version. The brutal, ugly truth. I met his eyes. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to give you informed choice. He reached for my hand, threading our fingers together. These 6 months, you've learned the business side. The legitimate operations mixed with illegal. You've seen negotiations and territory disputes. But tonight was different. Tonight was violence. Immediate and final. And I need to know if you can live with that. If you can be with a man who does that. Kills people. Protects what's mine through whatever means necessary. He corrected. Including killing. Yes. I looked at our joined hands. His were larger, scarred along the knuckles from fights I'd never asked about. Mine were smooth, unmarked, but somehow they fit together perfectly. I should be horrified, I admitted. I should be running, or calling the police, or something. But I'm not. What are you? Trying to understand. I looked up at him. You said he was there to kill me. How do you know? Because before I killed him, I asked. He confirmed the Morettis hired his team, showed him your photo, promised $50,000 for your death. Dante's jaw tightened. They wanted to take you from me, use your death to start a war, and they picked the wrong woman to target. Because I'm yours. Because you're mine. He agreed. And I protect what's mine. The possessiveness should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like safety. Like I'd spent my whole life waiting for someone to claim me with this kind of fierce certainty. When I signed that contract, I said slowly, when I accepted being your personal assistant, did you know it would come to this? That we'd end up here? I knew the Morettis were a threat. I knew bringing you deeper into my world would make you a target. He paused. But I also knew I couldn't let you go. Couldn't watch you walk out of my life. So I chose to protect you instead. That's not really a choice. You took away my option to leave. Yes. No apology. Just acknowledgement. I did. And I'd do it again. Because the alternative was losing you. And that's not something I'm willing to accept. I should have been angry. Should have felt manipulated. But 6 months of watching Dante operate had taught me something important. He didn't make decisions lightly. Every move was calculated. Every action served a purpose. If he'd brought me into his world, made me his personal assistant, kept me close, it was because that was the only way to ensure my safety. The man tonight, I said. The one you killed. If you'd let him live, what would have happened? He would have tried again, or told the Morettis how close he got, given them information to plan a better attack. Dante's thumb traced patterns on my palm. He was a dead man the moment he accepted the contract on you. I just expedited the timeline. That's cold. That's reality in my world. He pulled me closer until I was tucked against his side. I know you grew up believing in justice systems and trials and innocent until proven guilty. But those things don't exist where I operate. There's only strong and weak. Quick and dead. Protective and vulnerable. And which one are you? All of the above, depending on the situation. His arm around my shoulders tightened. But with you, Mia, I'm only ever protective. Fiercely, violently protective. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, night sounds filtered through the glass. Crickets, wind in the trees, the distant call of an owl. Inside, just the sound of our breathing, the steady beat of Dante's heart under my ear, where I'd pressed my head to his chest. "I'm not leaving," I said finally. "I'm not running or calling the police or pretending I can go back to who I was before you. Whatever that makes me, complicit, compromised, corrupted, I don't care." His hand moved to my hair, fingers threading through the strands. "Are you sure?" "No." Honesty felt important. "I'm terrified of the danger, of how much I want this, of what it means that I'm choosing a man who kills people to protect me." I tilted my head back to look at him. "But I'm sure about you, about us." Something shifted in his expression. The careful control slipped, showing raw emotion beneath. "Mia." I kissed him before he could finish. Kissed him with 6 months of pent-up desire and 2 hours of adrenaline-fueled clarity. This wasn't a hallway encounter or a Wednesday night couch session. This was choice. Complete and informed and irrevocable. Dante responded immediately, his arms pulling me onto his lap so I straddled him. The kiss deepened, became hungry and demanding. His hands found the hem of my blouse, slid underneath to touch bare skin. I gasped against his mouth, arching into the contact. "We should stop," he murmured, even as his fingers traced patterns up my spine. "You've had a traumatic night. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly." I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I want this. Want you. Not because I'm scared or processing trauma. Because I've spent 6 months falling for you, and I'm done pretending it's just professional." 3 years. That's how long it had been since the attack at the warehouse. Since Dante had killed a man in front of me and I'd chosen to stay. Since I'd moved from personal assistant to something that didn't have a clean corporate title. Partner, maybe, though that word didn't capture the complexity of our relationship. Wife, in all but legal paperwork. Dante had asked me to marry him properly 6 months after that night in the safe house, presenting me with a ring during a private dinner at the penthouse. I'd said yes without hesitation. We'd married in a small ceremony attended by his mother, my handful of close friends, and several dozen men whose names I'd learned over the past years. Marco had walked me down the aisle, since my father had died when I was young and there was no one else. Dante had cried when he said his vows. This dangerous man who killed without remorse, showing vulnerability only I ever saw. That had been 2.5 years ago. I was 28 now. He was 35, and I was 5 months pregnant with his daughter. The pregnancy had been unplanned, but not unwelcome. We'd talked about children in abstract terms, but both of us had assumed it was years away. Then I'd missed my period, taken a test, stared at the positive result for 10 minutes before telling Dante. His reaction had been immediate and intense. Joy mixed with fear, mixed with something that looked like possessiveness multiplied by 1,000. "I'm putting guards on you 24/7, he'd announced. "And you're not leaving the penthouse until the baby's born." "Absolutely not." I'd learned to push back against his overprotective instincts. "I'll accept additional security, but I'm not spending 4 more months trapped inside. Our daughter deserves a mother who doesn't lose her mind from cabin fever." We'd compromised. I had guards, but also freedom to move within carefully defined parameters. I still worked alongside Dante, managing the legitimate sides of his business empire, while he handled the shadows. I still attended family dinners at his mother's house, still went to the social clubs where old men treated me like the respectable wife I'd become in their eyes, but things had shifted lately. The Moretti situation, supposedly resolved 3 years ago, was flaring again. New leadership had taken over their family, younger and more aggressive than the previous generation. They wanted territory Dante controlled, wanted to prove themselves through conflict rather than negotiation. Last month, they'd hit one of Dante's shipping operations. Killed 2 guards. Stolen merchandise worth $500,000. It was a direct challenge. one Dante couldn't ignore without appearing weak. Which was why I was currently sitting in a conference room in one of Dante's legitimate office buildings, 6 months pregnant, and listening to men discuss war. They're pushing for confrontation, Antonio, one of Dante's oldest advisors, was saying. Every week, another provocation, another border test. They want blood. Then we give them blood. Marco's voice was hard. In the 3 years since he'd become my personal guard, we'd developed a sibling-like relationship. He was protective of me in ways that went beyond professional duty. Hit them back twice as hard. And start a war that will draw federal attention we don't need. Dante's fingers drummed on the table, a rare tell of agitation. No, we need to be smarter than that. With respect, boss, being smart reads as being weak. This from Giovanni, a younger captain who'd risen quickly through the ranks. The Morettis are counting on you playing it safe. They think you've gone soft. Soft? Dante's voice dropped to that dangerous quiet that made smart people back away. Because I don't immediately start a war that could get my people killed? Because you've got a wife and a baby coming. Giovanni didn't back down, which was either brave or stupid. Everyone knows you've changed since you married Mia. More cautious, more concerned with collateral damage. Giovanni. Marco's warning came too late. Dante stood, moving around the table with predatory grace. You think I've gone soft? Think I care more about my wife than my organization? He stopped in front of Giovanni, who to his credit didn't flinch. Let me be crystal clear about something. Mia isn't my weakness. She's my motivation. Every decision I make, every action I take, is calculated to protect her and the child she's carrying. Which means I'm more dangerous now than I ever was before, because I have something worth burning the world down to protect. The temperature in the room had dropped. Everyone knew that tone, knew what it meant when Dante got that quiet, deadly calm in his voice. I apologize, boss, Giovanni managed. I spoke out of turn. Yes, you did. Dante didn't move, and if you ever suggest again that my wife makes me weak, we'll have a very different conversation. One that doesn't happen in front of others. Understood? Understood. Dante returned to his seat beside me, his hand finding mine under the table. To everyone else, he looked composed. But I felt the tension in his grip, felt how close he'd come to violence. The Moretti situation needs resolution, I said, breaking the silence. All eyes turned to me. Even after 3 years, some of Dante's men still weren't accustomed to me speaking in strategy meetings. But Marco's right that an immediate strike will escalate into war, and Giovanni's right that appearing weak invites more aggression. So what do you suggest? Antonio asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. He'd been one of the first to treat me as an equal rather than just the boss's wife. Precision over force. I pulled up the tablet I'd been taking notes on. The Morettis have 3 primary operations: their shipping routes, their legitimate casino fronts, and their political connections. They've been attacking our shipping. We respond by undermining their political protection. Make it expensive for officials to stay bought by them. How? Marco leaned forward. Evidence of corruption leaked to media. Anonymous tips to FBI field offices. Pressure on their legitimate businesses through regulatory scrutiny. I glanced at Dante, who was watching me with something like pride in his eyes. We don't need to kill anyone to make their operations untenable. We just need to remove their protection and let the legal system do the work. Dante's thumb traced patterns on my palm. The problem with that approach is timeline. Building cases takes months. The Morettis won't wait that long before escalating. Then we give them a reason to wait. I pulled up another file on my tablet. We offer them a deal. A temporary truce while we negotiate territory divisions through neutral mediators. During that truce, we work the legal angles. By the time negotiations supposedly break down, their infrastructure is compromised enough that they can't afford war. Silence. Then Antonio laughed, the sound surprised and approving. She's thinking like one of us now. She always was, Dante said quietly. She just needed time to learn the language. The contractions started during Sunday dinner at Dante's mother's house. We were sitting around her dining table, the one that had been in her family for 3 generations, eating pasta that she'd spent all afternoon preparing. Dante's hand was on my thigh under the table, a casual touch that had become habit. We were happy, safe, in the eye of the storm that had been building with the Morettis. Then pain lanced through my abdomen. I gasped, my fork clattering against my plate. Dante was beside me immediately, his hand moving to my stomach. Mia? What's wrong? I think... Another contraction cut off my words. The baby. She's coming. Chaos erupted. Dante's mother started praying in Italian, crossing herself repeatedly. Marco was on his phone calling the hospital. Dante scooped me into his arms, carrying me to the car despite my protest that I could walk. She's 3 weeks early, he said, and I could hear the fear beneath his control. 3 weeks, Mia. Babies come when they're ready. I tried to sound calm, even as another contraction made me grip his shirt. It's going to be fine. It wasn't fine. The delivery was long and complicated. Our daughter, whom we'd decided to name Isabella, was breech. The doctors talked about C-sections and complications. Dante refused to leave my side, holding my hand through every contraction, every decision, every moment of terror when they said the baby's heartbeat was dropping. 23 hours after the first contraction, Isabella Rose Castellano entered the world screaming. 7 pounds, 2 ounces of perfect, healthy fury. They placed her on my chest, and I felt everything change. Every priority, every fear, every definition of love I'd ever known. She was beautiful. Dark hair like her father, eyes that would probably be hazel like mine, 10 perfect fingers and 10 perfect toes. A miracle. Dante cried. This dangerous man who had killed people without remorse, who ran a criminal empire, who was feared by half the city. He stood beside the hospital bed with tears streaming down his face, staring at his daughter like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. She's perfect, he whispered. Mia, she's absolutely perfect. She is. I was crying too, exhausted and elated and overwhelmed. We made her, you and me. He leaned down, kissed my forehead, then Isabella's. I love you both more than I can articulate, more than I knew I was capable of loving anything. We had 3 hours of peace, 3 hours of the 3 of us in that hospital room, learning our daughter, learning how she made little sighing sounds when she slept, how she had a temper when she was hungry, how she fit perfectly in her father's arms. Then Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. Boss. 1 word. But the way he said it made my blood run cold. Dante handed Isabella to me carefully, kissed her forehead 1 more time, then stepped into the hallway. I could see them through the window, could read Marco's body language even if I couldn't hear the words. Something bad, something that required immediate action. When Dante returned, his face was a mask. The Morettis hit 3 of our operations while we were here. They knew about the baby, knew I'd be distracted. How much damage? 2 men dead, 4 wounded, shipments destroyed. His hands clenched into fists. And they sent a message. Next time they're coming for you and Isabella. Ice flooded through me. They threatened our daughter? They threatened what I love most. Dante moved to the window, looking out at the city below. Which means this ends. Now. Tonight. Dante, you can't. I can, and I will. He turned, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw the man from the warehouse, the one who'd killed without hesitation. They made this personal. They involved our child. There's no negotiation after that, no mediation, no clever legal maneuvering, just elimination. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago. He pulled out his phone, sent a rapid series of texts. End them. Completely. The entire Moretti operation. Everyone who was involved in the threat against my family. That's not a battle. That's a war. Yes. He came to the bedside, cupped my face in his hands. And I will burn this city down if that's what it takes to keep you both safe. Do you understand me? Nothing matters except protecting you and our daughter. Nothing. I held Isabella closer, feeling her tiny heartbeat against my chest. Then do what you have to do, but come back to us. We need you. Something shifted in his expression. He kissed me, slow and deep and desperate. Then he kissed Isabella's forehead with infinite gentleness. I'll come back. I promise. He left. Marco stayed, positioning himself outside the hospital room door. Additional guards appeared within minutes, securing the floor. I sat in that hospital bed, holding our newborn daughter, and waited. The war lasted 3 days. I got updates through Marco. Dante's forces hit every Moretti operation simultaneously. Shipping yards, restaurants, the casino fronts. Political connections were exposed through carefully timed media leaks. Evidence of corruption appeared in FBI inboxes. The legal machinery Dante and I had discussed in that conference room months ago ground into motion with brutal efficiency. But it wasn't just legal maneuvering. On the third night, Dante met the Moretti leadership personally, the old guard who'd authorized the threat against Isabella. I didn't ask what happened in that meeting, didn't want to know the details. But when Dante returned to the hospital on day 4, there was blood on his cuffs that hadn't quite come out in the wash. It's over, he said, sinking into the chair beside my bed. Completely over. The Moretti organization is done. The few who survived are running. And every family in the city knows what happens when someone threatens my children. Children? I repeated. Plural? I'm operating under the assumption we'll have more. He managed a tired smile. If you'll still have me after this, after everything I did. I looked at him. My husband. Father of my child. A man who had just waged war to protect us. Who had killed. Who had burned down an entire criminal organization, who was sitting there with exhaustion in every line of his body, asking if I still wanted him. I'll always want you, I said simply. For better or worse. Remember? We took vows. He reached for Isabella, and I placed her in his arms. He held her with the same infinite care he always did, like she was made of glass. She yawned, stretched, settled against his chest like she knew she was safe. Things are going to change, he said quietly. I'm getting out. Out of what? The life, the shadows, the illegal operations. He looked up at me. I can't do this anymore. Can't risk that Isabella grows up losing her father to a bullet or a prison sentence. Can't risk that you spend your life looking over your shoulder. Dante, you can't just walk away from... I can, and I will. His voice held determination I'd heard before, but never directed at this. I've already started the process, moving money, legitimizing operations, burning bridges with people who won't accept my exit. In 6 months, Castellano Enterprises will be exactly what it pretends to be, a legitimate business empire. Nothing more. That's not going to be easy. Nothing worth doing is. He kissed Isabella's head. But she's worth it. You're both worth it. 3 years later, he'd made good on that promise.